Hello everyone, my name's Jo Barclay Loggie. We're going to be looking, I'm wearing it, we're going to be looking at making this pendant today. So let me just take this off and move it a bit closer so that you can see it. It's using a beautiful cabochon from Puca. And then there are a couple of new shaped beads. Well, they're new to me. They might not be new to you, but they are definitely new to me, that I've used to embellish around the bezel of the cabochon. As always, we will start off by looking at our ingredients. And I've got 5 different types of beads plus the cabochon. The cabochon is 18 millimeters in size, and this one has got a lovely kind of gold fleck through that jade green. When we look at the different beads that we're using, I've got size 11 Delicas here in Duracoat galvanized gold. I've got size 15 seed beads here, and these are a metallic June bug. They've got a lovely shine to them. And then these two are my 2 new shapes. The one on the left, this one is called a Piros bead. It's a Piros, oh, there's an alien there, that shouldn't be there. So these are Piros beads. They've got 2 holes in them. They have a slightly wider base to the top. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show this to you on camera. So the base, which is on the left hand side where my needle is slightly wider, and the other end tapers a little, and there are 2 lots of holes there. And we will be picking them up with the holes at the base before the edge that tapers. Those are called the Piros beads, and then we've got the Volos beads. Now these are triple drilled, so they've got 3 holes. If I hold one up that way, you can see we've got 1 hole through the middle and then 1 either side. But what I really like about them is they're flat on one side, and they're similar to some of our other double drilled shapes. But on the top, they've got this lovely bit of texture. There's that little knobble on the top there, and that gives real texture to your piece. And then we've got some 3 millimeter bicones. Now I will list all the colors that I've used in the description of this video, and you'll see I've made it in 2 different colorways. This is the one I was wearing, and this is a blue and silver one. And I've done it in 3 different ways because there actually are kits that are going with this. Kits may no longer be available when you're looking at this video, but there were kits, and there will be a PDF pattern available on my Etsy shop as well. So you've got the free YouTube video and the PDF pattern, depending on which way you like to learn. I've also got a size 12 beading needle here, and I'm using black satin fireline today. Just before we get started, I'm going to show you the pendants a little more up close and personal. So this is the blue, the Cabochon par Puca, that has got a bit of a silver fleck running through it. And this is the jonquille, or the yellowy tones, which have been perfect for this sort of autumnal weather that we've been having at the moment. And before we get going completely, if you think you're going to enjoy this tutorial and you don't want to miss out on another one, please remember to hit that little subscribe button on your screen. Doesn't cost you a penny, but it does mean you'll be notified when I load something new up onto the tube. The very first step, and it would be boring to watch me add on all these beads, so I've done it already. I have taken about 1.5 meters of my thread, of my fireline thread, popped it on my needle, and I have threaded on 46 of my size 11 Delicas. That is the number we need to surround an 18 millimeter cabochon in order to start bezeling it. And I'm going to move them down towards the end of my thread, leaving myself a tail. I guess you need about 10 or 15 centimeters to weave away at the end so that you don't have an end that starts unraveling. And you're going to pass your needle back up through all of those Delicas. Once you've passed through all of them, you'll have formed a ring, and I'm just going to take my needle through past the tail section just to really complete that circle of Delicas. So let's get the tail out the way, and there I have my little ring of 46 Delicas, which will eventually sit around my cabochon. We're going to start with Peyote Stitch. That's the technique we're going to use for bezeling. And I'm sure many of you know how to do Peyote Stitch. And Peyote Stitch is all about picking up, or I should say that single, flat, even peyote, because there are a number of different peyote stitches, is all about picking up one bead, skipping over a bead and passing through the next. So I'm still going to be using my size 11 Delicas. I'm picking up one and I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can really see here. You can see exactly where my thread is coming out. I'm going to skip over a bead and I'm going to pass through the very next one, and I just want to pass through one bead. And when I pull my needle through and my thread through, you'll see that that bead that I've just added sits alongside one, and it's starting to, well, we're going to get this pattern of 2 1 2 1 2 1, a bit like a hopscotch pattern. So I'm going to pick up another of my Delica beads. I'm going to skip over a bead and pass through the next one, and I'm really trying to make sure that my hands stay in the shot for you to see. So passing through one, you can see exactly where my thread is coming out, how I'm skipping over a bead and passing through the next one. Pull your thread through, and you can really see how that hopscotch pattern is starting to develop, that 2 1 2 1, and you're going to do that the whole way around. So initially we picked up 46 beads. In this second round, you're only going to be picking up half of that, 23, doing your peyote stitch the whole way round. I'm almost back to the beginning at the end of this round, so I've got one more Delica to add in, and I thought I'd do it with you, especially if you're a newbie, to show you how to step up into the next round. So let's do a little bit of zooming again and get my fingers in the right place. You can see where my thread's coming out of. I'm going to skip a bead. I'm going to pass through that bead that sits just in front of the two that are lying side by side, and then I'm going to come up through that first one that is sticking out. And it's a wonderful term that you'll hear many designers use all the time, called a sticky outie. And because so many designers use that term, it must be real, right? Sticky outies, we all talk about sticky outies. So I've skipped over a bead, I've passed through the single bead that sat just in front of the first two that were side by side, and I've popped my needle through that first sticky outie. And there I have my first round completed all the way around. I've got that 2 1 2 1 2 1 pattern. The third round is going to be just the same. So we're sticking with the 11-Os, with the Delicas, and this time you're going to pop one into each of those gaps. So you're moving from sticky outie to sticky outie. So I'm picking up one, get in focus, and you can see I'm going to pass straight through that next sticky outie there. So it's another round where you're going to be picking up, it just fills in the gap there. You're going to be picking up 23 more Delicas in this round, just moving all the way around, filling in those gaps. Now, if you are unsure on Peyote Stitch, I do have a number of beginners videos on Peyote Stitch, and I'll pop those in the description, or the links to those in the description as well, because I'm not spending an awful amount of time going through Peyote Stitch on this video. So I'm going to go all the way around, adding in another 23 of my Delicas, and I'll join you back for the next round. One more to go, almost back at the beginning of the round. We're back to where we started. I'm picking up one more, I'm skipping over a bead, and I'm passing through the next one, and then, I won't do it in one go, so I'm just going to pass through the next one, and then I'm going to step up. So I've skipped over, pass through the next one, and I'm going to step up through the first bead that I added in this round. So I'm back into a sticky outie again. And at this stage, you're welcome to pop your needle onto your tail and just weave it away through those beads there, and then you can snip it off. I'm going to bring the cabochon in just quickly. So you can see how that's going to go sit around the cabochon, but it's not secure at all. Cabochon is just going to float about, fall out, and not be part of your design unless we manage to shrink this circumference a little. And we're going to do that by changing down to a smaller bead. So we're now going to change to our size 15 seed beads, and that will really cinch that in and start to trap the cabochon. But we're not going to put the cab in just yet. We're going to do a round of 15s without that. But I'm going to get rid of my tail before I continue. Need a section for bloopers and outtakes. I've just consulted my design notes, and we are not dropping down a size just yet. We are sticking with one more row of the 11s. So we're picking up the 11s once more. So we will have 4 rows of 11s, but they're kind of in a zigzag to count. So again, I'm just picking one up at a time, and I'm filling in the gaps, going in between those sticky outies. And if we zoom in a little bit on that, you'll be able to see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 rounds with your 11s. Before we go any further, I fear I may have confused you all a bit with my mistake. So we're going to have a good look at what we've got now. I've just completed the round. The first round we picked up 46 of our delicas, and then we had 3 rounds picking up 23. So you should have a band that looks like this. You've got 3 delicas in a row followed by 2, 3, 2. And it actually amounts, if you count them carefully, it amounts to 5. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 in the widest part and 2 in the narrow bit. And that should be the same the whole way round. So if you get yourself to that stage, whoa, we're on the same page and we can move forward. And I promise, now's the time to cinch in that circle with our size 15s. So I'm going to pick up one of my little 15s, and I've moved to the little green ones now, and I'm still doing the same thing, peyote stitch. I'm filling in those gaps. You can see where that little 15 is going to go in. But because those 15s are smaller than the 11s, when you pull your thread through now, it's going to pull the edge of that band of the delicas in slightly, and it's that little 15 that's going to sit against the edge of your cabochon. So we're going to go the whole way around, adding in a row of little 15s, and all the time pulling your thread in tight so that it pulls that band over the edge a little bit. So we're going to go all the way around with your 15s. I'm nearing the end of my first round of 15s, and come on, focus, there we go. I'm about to go through the last delica from the previous round and step up through the first 15 that I added in this round. Now you can definitely see that it's starting to pull it in, especially if you look from the top. You can see how it's starting to pull in, but it's not enough yet to trap that cabochon. So you're going to do a second round of the 15s. So just as we've done all the way around, and I know when I go to pick up a bead, all you see are my hands, but I've got keeping it on zoom so that you can see the needle path and where I'm going. Picking up 15s, and now you're just going from 15 to 15 all the way around, one at a time, and you'll see how it closes in the gap between those two 15s. So you're going to add in 23, and I'll come back to you at the end of the round. My second round of 15s is completed, and I hope that when you've completed yours, you can see how those 15s have really pulled the top edge of that circle, that ring, in slightly. So let's have a look what it looks like with the cabochon. I'm actually going to flip it over because this is going to be my front where my green is. So I'm going to flip it over to the other side, and I'm also going to flip my cabochon over so that the flat side is facing me, and I'm going to just pop it in. And when I turn it over, now you can see that that's quite a nice snug fit around my cabochon. If you're still a little bit concerned, what you can do is pass through that second round of 15s once more, all the way through, just through the second round, really pulling your thread in tight. I personally don't like the extra thread showing on top of my cabochon, and I know that my beading is tight enough for it not to fall out. So if I pop that back in again, you can see That's in, but there's actually nothing holding it in on the back here. The front has got quite secure, so we now need to thread our way through to the back and add 15s using Peyote Stitch onto the back so that we really trap that cabochon. I'm going to just pop it out again for a moment. My thread is exiting a sticky outie on the 15s, and now I'm going to weave through to the back. So you don't want your thread to show. As long as you go across where the beads leave that sort of meeting pathway. So my thread is coming out the front of the 15, but I'm actually going to come backwards through the 11, because then my thread will be pulled, the pathway of the thread will be pulled straight across. Then I'm going to go forwards through the 11 alongside. This is just me getting to the other side of my 11s, and now I can turn and come through. Oh, I can keep going that way, actually that's easier, just following my needle. I'm going up through an 11, I'm making my way to the outer edge, and here you can see I'm going to pass through a sticky outie, and then I'm ready to start a round of 15s on the back. Now I don't need my cabochon in initially, and some people find it really tricky beading. If you pop it in, beading, holding it in place, you can do that from the very beginning, but you can get at least 3/4 of the way round and still pop your cabochon in. So I'm going to, it's resting, the dome of the cabochon is resting on the finger pads of my left hand, and I'm just holding it in place now while I start to add my 15. So I'm going through the 11 sticky outies as I add my 15s and pulling in all the time, because I need that 15 now to pull this edge in over the cabochon. So I'm going to pick up another 15 and I'm going through the next sticky outie. If it looks like I'm struggling to get my needle through the beads, sometimes I'm watching the lens on the camera and I'm not actually watching my fingers, and it's because I'm trying to make sure that I'm always in focus and in the right place, so I apologize for that. Right, so we're going to go all the way around, adding one row of 15s, and then we're going to do another round. So just as we did on the top here with 2 rounds of 15s, we'll be doing 2 rounds of 15s on the bottom. If you're not beading with your cabochon in place, you can see I've come just sort of over halfway around with my 15s. Now's the time to pop that cabochon in. There's still plenty of room for jiggling and maneuvering it around, and you'll be able to get it in, and possibly even beyond this point. But from now onwards, you want it in place, and you want to try and keep it as flat on the pads of your fingers as you can, so that you can really start to pull those 15s in. So I've got to come round to here to complete my first round, and then I'm going to do a second round of 15s onto all those green 15s that are there already. One round of the 15s complete. It's still rather loose, so I'm going to continue picking up 15s and completing a second round of my 15s, going, whoops, now I was watching my hands and not the camera, and it took you right out of shot. So a second round of 15s all the way around, linking those little green 15s or whatever color you're using together so they form like a little V over your gold delicas. So complete that all the way around, and then I am actually going to show you how to go through that second round of 15s once more, just to make that back really secure. I've completed my second round of 15s. Now, if you're feeling a little anxious that perhaps your tension isn't quite tight enough, you are welcome to do another row of 15s. This is the back of your pendant, so nobody's going to see it. You may have to decrease the number of 15s that you're adding in just to really pull it in. So instead of adding in 23, maybe you're going to add in 19 in the next round, just decreasing either side by 1. So you need to, the last thing I'm going to do on this one is to go through that last round of 15s that I added. So I'm not adding any beads. I'm just going through that last round of 15s and really pulling my thread in. And you might be able to go through more than one bead at a time, or it might be a case of just going through one at a time. But you go the whole way around, just pulling that thread in, and that's really going to cinch it in so that your cabochon is trapped and there's no escape. Once you've passed round through all those 15s again, as I said, you can do it on the front as well, but depending on the color of beads you've used in the thread, it's not so noticeable with the dark beads and the dark thread. But I don't like to see a thread line in between those 15s on the top, but I don't mind it on the back. So once you've been through all those 15s, you're going to make your way to the middle of your peyote band with the delicas. Now, do you remember me talking about your peyote band has got a row of 3, a row of 2, a row of 3, a row of 2. You want to be exiting the middle one in a row of 3 of your delicas. So let us see if we can zoom in here and I can show you exactly where my thread is exiting. Can you see? There's the row of 3 just above my thumbnail, and my thread is exiting that middle delica in the row of 3. If I bring my needle, it's exiting this one here. So that's where you want to be to start the fun part, or part 2 of the embellishment of our cabochon. And the first round of that, let me just zoom out again so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to be picking up 2 15s, 1 11, and 2 more 15s. So 5 beads in total each time that we pick up now. I'm going to only be going through delicas in that line, but I'm going to skip the next one across and go through the second one. So if I pop my needle in and zoom right in to show you exactly where I am. So my thread is exiting of that delica. I've picked up my 5 beads. I've skipped over the middle one, which is there right underneath my nail, and I've come through the next one. So I'm working in that third row, that middle row of delicas all the way around. And once I pull my thread through for those 5, you'll see they form a little V to the side of my bezel. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up 2 15s and 11 and 2 more 15s and do exactly the same thing. So staying in the same line, I'm going to skip one of the delicas and pass through the next one. And you'll see those little V's will sit side by side all the way around. In the very next round, I'm going to be using those delicas. So if you can make them a little bit pointy, just by pulling them out a little and then pulling your thread through, just so that they're not lying flat. 2 15s and 11, 2 15s, and we go again. Skip a delica and pass through the next one. You'll be able to see if you've gone wrong because your pattern, your beads won't sit neatly around the edge. So I'm just grabbing that delica, pulling it out, and then pulling my thread through. And you can see how neatly those sit around the edge. Let's just zoom in once more so you can see how they sit close together. So 2 15s and 11, and 2 more 15s, and again we're going to skip a delica and pass through the very next one. So we're going to get this little frill the whole way around our cabochon, and I'll come back to you when I've completed. I'm going to finish this round of the frill with you because it needs a bit of explanation. So I've just picked up my 5 beads, 2 15s and 11 and 2 15s. My thread is exiting from this delica. I'm going to skip over one and pass through the next one, and you'll notice that there is a little gap. I just want to pass through one bead. There we go. Once I've added these, there's a little gap between this delica and the first one that we exited. Now, the reason for this is when we did our very first round, we picked up 46 beads, which is an even number. And from then onwards, we were picking up 23, an odd number. Now, this little gap is too small to take the full frill, the 2 15s, the 11, and the 2 15s. So to complete the gap, we're going to pick up 1 15, 1 11, 1 15, and pass through that Delica that is just before, I don't want to go through both, just the one. Through that Delica that is just before the first lot of 15s and 11s. And once I've pulled my thread through, you'll be able to see how different that looks compared to the two either side. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that my Delicas aren't sticking out too much, because in the next round I'm going to be passing through them and that's going to pull them into place. But I want to look at this little section here. So either side of this tiny little picot here, we've got the bigger ones which go all the way around. This little one here now is going to become the focal point for the top of your pendant, and it will be where we attach the bail. So, oops, if I just bring this one in, you can see I've got a little bail that I've beaded on there so that you can add a beaded rope or chain or whatever you would like. But that is going to happen exactly where this little picot is. So that is now the top of your pendant. So now you're going to move on to the next round. You're going to pass up through those two little 15s that we've just added in the frill and the first Delica bead. You want to be exiting the Delica. I'm going to zoom out so that you can see what we're doing. We're now going to bridge the gap between the gold Delicas all the way around our cabochon. And the sequence of beads we're going to pick up is a 15, followed by a Delica, followed by a Volos bead. Now the Volos are the triple drilled ones, the ones with the bit of texture on the top. So you need to be careful which way you're picking them up, because you want that little knobbly bit to be visible on the top. So I'm going through the bottom hole, the lower hole of that, and then I'm going to pick up a Delica and a 15 to go on the other side. So let's just see what we've picked up here. So I've got a 15, a Delica, a Volos, a Delica, a 15. So that's just repeated on the other side in reverse. And I'm going to pass through the next Delica bead. Pull my thread through, and then you have your first little section. Now we're going to repeat that all the way around. So a 15, a Delica, a Volos bead, a Delica, and a 15. And then we're going to pass through the next Delica, moving around our cabochon. So this is going to be the pattern that we do the whole way around. Now, these Volos beads might flop around a bit because they've got another 2 holes that are not attached to anything. Fear not, in the next few rounds we are going to make it very sturdy and they won't be budging. So we're going to complete the round of a 15 Delica, Volos, Delica, 15, and just linking up all those Delica beads around the frill of our cabochon. So I haven't quite completed the round because at the top, which is the top of our pendant, we've got that tiny little picot, and we're going to do things slightly differently. But just a quick tip before we go any further. As you're adding your Volos or your Piros beads, so it doesn't matter, in fact, any shaped bead that's got more than one hole, check all those holes first. Just get your needle and poke through all the holes, all 3 on the Volos, before you add them, because there's nothing more infuriating than completing a round, moving on to the next one, and you haven't checked that all the holes are clear of the dye that they've used to color the beads, and you can't get your needle through. So it can be very frustrating. Just check that. Doesn't matter if you're using super duos, gem duos, whatever shape bead, Tyler beads, just check your holes before you use them. And the other thing to check is that you've got all the knobbly bits facing up on your design, because that's where the texture comes in. So you don't want the flat part of the Volos facing up. You want the little knobbly bit on the top facing up. So up at the top here, again, our gap is smaller than what we've had the whole way around. So either side of that little picot, we're going to do the same thing between those Delica beads. And that's just going to be a size 15 seed bead, a Volos, and a 15. And I'm going to pass through the Delica of that tiny little picot. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. So 15, a Volos. I want to make sure I'm picking it up the right way. And a 15. And I'm going to pass through the Delica. Make sure you're passing through the right Delica. So I will zoom in. There's the Delica we need. So ahead of the 15 Delica and Volos where we started. So if I pop this down and take the zoom off, that is the top. You can see two Volos beads are slightly closer together. That's where my bail is going to come off. And there is the rest of my design. So to start the next round, we're going to step up through the 15, the Delica, and that lower hole of the Volos of the first one that we added. And then I'm going to change direction and go through that middle hole of the Volos bead. I haven't picked up any beads yet. I'm just changing direction. Now, in the big gaps all the way around, we're going to be picking up the same sequence, but I'm very close to the top of my pendant here because I've only just added those last two Volos and come through. So in the big gaps, we're going to be picking up, let's zoom out, a Delica, a Piros bead. Now, again, you want to be picking up the bottom of the Piros bead because we're going to use the second hole later on. Just check that you can get through both holes. So I'm going through, if I hold it up for you, the holes are closer to one edge and they're closer to the flatter, wider edge, and I'm going through the bottom of that. So a Delica, a Piros, and a Delica, and I'm going to go through the middle of the next Volos bead. And that Piros will want to swing around, but you will, when we fill in the third hole of the Volos with the second hole of the Piros, you'll be able to pull it into place. So don't worry if it wants to twirl around like that. It's not the end of the world. Now I'm up at the top where I've got my tiny little picot where my bail's going to be attached. And the only one I'm going to add in there is a Volos bead between those two Piros beads. So going through the middle hole of the Piros beads, I'm just going to attach one Volos. Now I've got the bigger gaps all the way around, so it's going to be one Delica, one Piros bead, and one Delica, and through the middle hole of the next Volos bead. So this is where the sundial, which is what I've named the pendant, where the sundial starts to take effect. These lovely spaces of the Piros beads start to form the dials of the sundials together with the Volos beads. So I've got another big gap. It's the same the whole way around now. Delica, a Volos, a Delica, a Piros bead, and a Delica, and through the middle hole of the Volos bead. There are so many different bead names. So just make sure your thread isn't caught up like mine is, and pull through. Delica, Piros, Delica, the whole way around, securing the middle hole of all those Volos. I've completed my round of adding in the Piros beads, and our pendant is really starting to take shape now. The last thing to do, other than making the bail, is to connect that third hole of all the Volos beads with the second hole of all the Piros beads. So I have come through the center hole of a Volos bead, and I'm going to change direction again, and this time come through the top, the third, the empty hole of that Volos. And before I move to the Piros, I'm going to give a bit of decoration to the top of the Volos bead, and that is going to be with a Delica, one of our gorgeous little 3mm bicone beads, and a Delica bead. And I'm going to pass back through that Volos bead, the same hole, but from the opposite direction. So my thread was exiting the lower part of it, and I've gone in through the top. And there I've got my little sparkly decoration on top of the Volos bead. To get across to the Piros, I'm feeling a bit, it's almost like, I know they're not Greek beads, but all this Greek, this sounds a bit like Greek mythology. I'm going to be using 2 of my 11 Delicas to go from the Volos to the Piros, and then from the Piros bead back to the next Volos. So I went through the empty hole of the Piros bead and then into the top empty hole of the Volos bead. And you need to decorate the top of the Volos before moving on again. So an 11, a bicone, and another 11 Delica, back through the same hole of that Volos bead you were exiting, but from the opposite direction. And then you've got your bit of sparkle above the top. To connect to the next Piros bead, I'm using 2 Delicas and making sure I'm going through the empty hole of the Piros bead. And from the Piros bead to the next Volos, it's another 2 Delicas through that empty hole of the Volos bead. So let's zoom in here and you can have a look at what's going on exactly. So there's my decoration with the little bicones around the top of each Volos, and then connecting the Piros beads to the Volos, I've just got 2 Delicas either side. So I'm going to do that all the way around until I get to the top where my bail attachment is going to be, and I'll come back and show you what I'm doing there. I've got back round to where I'm going to be attaching my bail, so the top of the pendant where I've just got one of the Piros beads sitting between 2 of the Volos beads. And I've been around the Volos bead, and I'm just going to now pick up 1 Delica, go across to that Piros bead that's sitting all by itself, and 1 Delica, and across to the Volos on the other side. And I need to decorate that Volos with my Delica, a bicone, and a Delica around the top. And then I've just got to connect it to that very first Piros bead. So 2 Delicas across to the empty hole of the Piros, and another 2 Delicas to go across to the Volos to complete the circle. So let's pop that through there. So there is the top of my pendant. It's the Piros sitting with just 1 little Delica either side, linking to the Volos beads, but there is the rest. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to make my way back towards that central Piros bead so that I can show you how to bead a little bail. I just used flat herringbone. You can bead it as big as you want because you might want to do a beaded rope to hang your pendant from, or you might just want to put some chain through it. And then we're almost done. So there you go. The sundial is taking shape and nearly complete. I've woven through my beads and my thread is exiting the right-hand side of this Piros bead at the top here. Now, if you don't know how to do flat herringbone, again, there are more tutorials on my YouTube channel which show you how to do flat herringbone. So if you get a little lost in this demo or it's not quite clear enough, have a look at one of those. There'll be a link in the description and it will show you a close-up of how we do flat herringbone. So I'm going to start off by picking up 2 11s. and I'm going to come back through that Piros bead, just through that top hole. Oh, sorry. And these two Delicas will sit on the top of that Piros bead. And I'm going to pass my needle up through the Delica on the right hand side. And now we're going to start the flat herringbone. So I'm going to pick up two beads, two of my Delicas, and these two Delicas are going to sit on top of those two that are on top of the Piros. So I'm going to come down through the Delica on the left hand side, and then up through the two Delicas. So it was down through one and up through two Delicas on the right hand side. And this is the start of my little flat herringbone. I'm going to pick up two Delicas again. I'm going to come down through one Delica on the left hand side. Take my thread straight across and come up through two Delicas on the right hand side. Pick up two more, and you're going to make this chain of flat herringbone as long or as short as you would like. So pick up two, come down one, take your thread straight across and pass up through two on the right hand side. So I'm going to continue making my little strip of flat herringbone, which I'll then be able to curl back on itself. If I show you this one, curl back on itself to attach to make the little bail. So there's the flat herringbone, and I just beaded a strip of probably about 15 rows and curled it back on itself to attach on the back there. My 14 or 15 rows of flat herringbone are done, and I'm going to attach it on the back in case there's any mucky bits you don't want them seen. Literally going to curl it back on itself and attach the two ends of the flat herringbone together. So my thread is exiting the left hand side. I'm going to pass my needle up through a few beads on the left hand side of my bail. Doesn't matter how many you go up, and as you pull it around you'll see how it closes it together, but that's only one side closed. So I'm coming round and I'm going straight across and all the way down. Come up quite a few, so I've got to go down quite a few, down to the bottom where the bail is going to be connected, and then I will go up the other side to complete the connection. Down at the bottom, and I'm going to just come up the other side, and you'll want to reinforce that by doing that a couple of times, going up and down through that connection point where the two bits of flat herringbone join each other. And then you can decide whether you're going to do a beaded rope or you're just going to hang it from a chain. It's up to you. If you have any questions, as always, please pop them in the comments below and I will get round to answering them. Sometimes I'm not always attached to my computer, so I don't see them for a couple of days, but I will always reply to questions. If not, let me know if you give this one a go, or let me know which is your favorite color combination that we've done here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time, and I'll be back soon with something new. Bye.